You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. Today on the show, we're going to be talking a little bit, really kind of all over the place, but mostly about entrepreneurship and business with my new friend, Cris Zimmermann. Cris is a seasoned entrepreneur, investor, and business leader. He's founded over 20 companies across 5 different countries. Born and raised in Frankfurt, Germany, with family roots in Italy and South Africa, his global perspective has deeply influenced his approach to business and leadership. As the author of Get Your House in Order, Principles of Success based on the life of Cosimo de Medici, Cris reveals how Cosimo's strategies can serve as a blueprint for modern entrepreneurs looking to build enduring success. This is a guy who takes his free time to study billionaires from the 15th century and write books about them. All right. So if there's somebody that's qualified to talk a little bit about how you can make a little bit more money this year, it's Cris. So Cris, without further ado, what's up? Welcome to the show.
Yes, Travis, thanks so much for the introduction. And it does sound a little bit all over the place, but I think this is the entrepreneurial gene. If you don't change your job every 3 months and the way you operate and the way you kind of structure your life, you're not a true entrepreneur. You're just a lame, I don't know, someone just collecting a paycheck. So you need to change what you do every 3 months. Otherwise, you're not working yourself out of the job. So I guess I've been doing that a few times, and that's why my whole business life is a mess in a sense, that I've got a lot of companies and a lot of people. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it definitely feels like that way sometimes. I want to go back in time a little bit, Cris. Tell me about the first dollar that you ever made. Or for you, it might not
So
have even been a dollar. It might have been some other currency.
Well, yeah. So I'm from Frankfurt, Germany. Here, that's where I was born and raised. My family's originally from South Africa. So I grew up basically as kind of as the Indiana Jones movies. Kind of in small plains over the bush of Africa. My grandfather, after the war in Germany, actually went down to work in the mines of South Africa. That's where he raised his family. My mom was born there. And then later on, they moved back to Germany, but I spent a lot of time between Germany and South Africa. Um, I would say that really my entrepreneurial money-making gene was kind of, kick-started when I was 18. My uncle from South Africa, he was a true entrepreneur. He built 1,000 houses down in South Africa, and he was working on some projects in Nairobi, Kenya, so Eastern Africa. And I wanted to do an internship with him. And basically, the minute I graduated, I just left the country and flew down and wanted to make some money, learn some entrepreneurial stuff. And basically, after 3 days of him seeing me kind of get engaged, he handed this whole building project of 11 townhouses and an office space there in Nairobi to me. And I started, I don't know, managing 150 people, doing payrolls,
Wow.
building houses, and negotiating business deals. And in a sense, he kind of injected in me that you can just start off immediately by project management. So I became a project manager by default, even before going to university. This was kind of my first Kenya shillings. So I would say my currency was Kenya shillings. My
There you
first
go.
that was Kenya shillings.
So forgive my ignorance on this, Cris. Is there in South Africa and Germany, these different countries, is there as much of an emphasis on small business ownership and entrepreneurship over there? Or is that fairly
But I would
atypical?
say that we're not known for it like in the US, like entrepreneurship. I mean, your whole country was built kind of on the entrepreneurial spirit. Germany is more kind of known for boring engineers who just build nice cars and great roads and infrastructure, but not very kind of the entrepreneurial spirit. I don't know. Probably I was born in the wrong country, I would say, because I've always felt so I've never had a proper paying job in my life. I've never had a paycheck. I've always been just setting up companies. So anyhow, so just to get back to my story in terms of, I went to Africa. I had a lot of fun, all kinds of experiences. And then I came back, studied law at Frankfurt University. I went to university, but basically the first semester I already started. I bought a big real estate project. My uncle wanted to invest in Germany, and I started buying my first 25 apartments downtown Frankfurt. That was one thing. The other thing is I opened a kitchen and started employing people to do some breakfast meals for students. And then I opened up some shops at Frankfurt Airport and at lounges. And so by the time I graduated, I had like 70 people employed, 10 cars, and no money in my bank account. So, I really got to. So I studied formally, but I was just messing around with all kinds of small business stuff. Yeah.
Were you, did you have intention at that time to pursue the career that you were getting your degree in, and you were just like doing
No,
stuff on the side?
No, actually, well, it's a very interesting question. So, I was an exchange student actually to Boise, Idaho as a teenager. So
Okay.
that's why I know the US a little bit. And my host dad in the US, he was a lawyer. Ran a big company, but he kind of got me introduced to law stuff. And so he was the first one to talk to me about law. And then I come out of a family of business. My dad was in business, had companies all over the world. And to be honest, I saw my dad really get into some difficult partnerships and business setups where later on we would say, it hadn't been structured properly, with the contracts. So he was and it continues to be a wonderful businessman, but there was, as a teenager growing up, we had family conversations around business and how do you set up all your stuff, and I could see that there's really you can protect your way on how you do business if you have the right legal structures and the right kind of setup. And so anyhow, so I felt, oh man, I'd rather get my bases covered, and so law is a good.
Gotcha.
I never wanted to be a lawyer. I thought this is the most boring job in the world. I love the law studies, but to just command a secretary and sit behind a desk and read emails all day, yeah, I'm not going to do that for anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah, definitely seems like you just have that entrepreneurial spirit, which for the best definition I could ever come up with that, Chris, and you let me know what you think of it, is the entrepreneurial spirit is basically just the desire to make more money combined with the inability to listen to authority. What do you think?
Yeah, I have that problem. Well, and actually, I would add number three, impact. So I've always
Yeah,
been,
sure.
I want to change the world in a sense. I want to change the industry. I want to, build something that
Do
actually,
big things. Yeah.
moves the needle down the road. And so, I love making money. I think that's awesome. Yeah, and all the stuff you can do with good cash flow. That's brilliant. But beyond that, I also just love to do projects of impact.
Yeah.
That has kind of came out of our family biography. My grandparents did a lot of work in Africa, kind of working with schools and hospitals, and a lot of also non-profit work. And I've always felt like it's also great to bring that energy kind of into the sector of business.
What has been the biggest entrepreneurial risk that you've taken in your career, and how did it end up working out?
Well, I started buying real estate projects in my own personal name, basically at the beginning of my 20s. And so they are not structured. And long story short, for the last 25 years, I've just bought apartment complexes, commercial space, and hotels here in the Rhine-Main area of Germany. So by now it's developed. We've got a family office that how we steward all this stuff, and we keep investing and keep buying. And so all that stuff is bought basically in my name or in our personal family's name. So not protected in any kind of LLCs or limited companies or any. And even though I'm a lawyer, I've always felt like I need to, how do you say, put your balls on the line.
Yeah.
And take the risk. So I've literally signed $1 million, €1 million contracts when I was, basically, had nothing under my belt, and took on big risks, and yeah, and you don't joke around with borrowed money.
Sure.
You have to put your name on the line, your reputation, and everything. And so I've been doing that, and so I tell people I've lost sleepless nights over €1,000, €10,000, €100,000, €1 million, 10 million, and we do much bigger deals now as well. So I've lost a lot of sleep over money, and putting deals together. I've seen deals fall apart. I've been but thank God it's overall it's been a great journey.
Describe for me the experience of your first big payday, and what was that big payday? And it doesn't necessarily need to be like a massive dollar amount, just a moment that you would describe as impactful for you, whether it was 500 euros or a million. Tell me the experience of that first big
Uh,
W that you got.
Probably there are various incidents, but here in Germany we've got this crazy law that if you buy property in your own personal name and keep it for 10 years, it's basically tax free when you sell it.
Wow,
Yeah. And so this
that's
is
not a
the reason
bad
why,
deal.
why we've always been buying it in my personal name. So, on this property and basically, as I said, it's not hidden away in some company structures. It's basically it's my name, in the with the bank and and the property title. And so yeah, and then after 10 years, you can sell it and literally your tax bill is zero. So if you know how to play the real estate game right, you work with money from the bank, put in some equity, work with the money from the bank, and then if you do it very smart, you run it, you run it on minus for 10 years, so you don't pay any taxes during that time, and then after 10 years, you've got it, because you reinvested the cash, you're fixing up the property, I don't know, you're putting furniture in, you're adding another thing on top. And then out of that, at the end of the 10 years, you've been spending money into the property, and then you've got a, wonderful, great property, and you just can sell it, and the profit is 100% tax free. So, in terms of numbers, the first property that I bought was 25 apartments. We bought it for, I think, 1.1 million euros. And then, we did a whole bunch of things to it, and 10 years later, we sold it for 3 million. And the debt was paid down, and so anyhow, this was a great payday and specifically, the best thing is no taxes, and so
No
so
kidding. Yeah.
that's yeah, it's nice to get some money in your bank account, but and so at the beginning of my career, I kind of came up with a plan. People that talk about retirement and how they want to retire, and that they basically get a monthly, cash into their bank, so that they, how do you call it, passive income,
Passive
kind
income. Yeah.
of create passive income. And I felt like, because we've got this kind of deal here with the 10 years, how about I just buy a property every year, one larger property. I do that for 10 years, and then every year I just sell one. And I just live of whatever I make, on that sale. And these are
Mm.
always, big numbers, because these are always apartment complexes, big spaces.
Yeah.
And so that was at the beginning of the career. This was kind of my plan. Just, every year, just, buy and add another one. Now, at some point, I just, started doing more, so because we all get a little bit crazy about that. So I started buying more, and then I didn't sell, so, I hold a lot of assets. But anyhow, this was kind of my strategy. But that's why, in a sense, the wealth just accumulated, and just, it kind of goes in this curve, and all of a sudden you've got all that stuff.
Yeah. So that first experience ended up being really foundational for you in a lot of ways. Just you basically set up a strategy for a good portion of your life based on that first building that you bought. Tell me, are there a lot? Are you guys feeling any sort of a squeeze over there for commercial real estate right now, Chris? I know there's a lot of operators, syndicators, fund managers in the U.S. that are feeling kind of a squeeze in the commercial real estate sector. Is that something that's being felt over in Europe as well?
First of all, I'm really not in the commercial space. So we're in the apartment living, apartment houses, so more on the residential side. That's what, and people always need, I'm only buying in kind of mainly here in the Rhine-Main area of Germany, which is kind of a metropolitan area, a very strong area. And so, people always need to live. So no problem at whatsoever. What we had, because of the pandemic, and then the war in Ukraine, is that the interest rate started climbing.
Yeah.
Now, here's the nice thing. When we buy a building, we fix the rate for 10 years. And so literally, I had zero problems the last few years, because my rates are all locked in for 10 years, and then basically you just keep going. And so
Yeah.
there, there's no a variation on the interest payments. So all very boring in the sense. That it's very conservative. Now, if you kind of do a lot of add-on and develop, and we do furnished apartments, we do Airbnb apartments, that kind of stuff, it can still develop greatly. But not squeeze. Developers here in Germany, a lot of them went out of business the last couple of years. A lot of them, went bankrupt because, people wouldn't buy new places. So I've always bought existing homes. So I buy cash flow positive as of day one buildings, and that's just a great formula. So I've never lost a euro or a dime on real estate. Yeah.
Cris, tell me the weirdest, just kind of a strange way that you've ever made a dollar, like just a random deal that you put together. You're like, that was
Oh
super
yeah.
weird.
So I was in Italy on a family vacation. So I've got a wife and we've got three teenagers. And we were on this family vacation, and I'm listening as I'm on the Ligurian coast, which is a beautiful coast there in Italy. I'm listening to a podcast on from some real estate guy in the US who's kind of, I don't know, explaining on how they set up their deal, and how do you construct your finance. And literally, he gave me a thought on how to structure a deal, which I'd never heard before. Now, I'm a German lawyer, specialized in corporate law and property law. And I've been doing a lot of business, here. So I know the game. But I remember I came back from the vacation, set up an appointment with my banker and said, listen, my friend, I know you may not have heard about that, but here's how I want to do this deal. And I want to structure it differently. And to make a long story short, that restructuring literally put 1 million euros into my bank account.
Wow. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
there's the value of continued education and podcasts right there.
100%. So, I mean, that's why for me, there's nothing like continued education. The most boring people in the world are those who just, go to high school, then get their bachelor's degree, master's degree, and whatever, and then basically they stall for the rest of their life and they're finished. So for me, that's why I read a crazy ton of books. That's why I wrote this book on the Medici family. I just love reading. I love studying. I love listening to podcasts and continue education. So, I've been on this journey the last 20 some years. I've 52 books per year, a minimum, one per week that I consume. Some years I doubled that and did 104 books. So I just love to learn, and it's just helped me in business. I mean, I have to be honest, and sometimes the learnings can come just also out of other fields, not just kind of the next business book, but really kind of some other creative ways on how to structure your stuff.
Tell me the couple of principles that were kind of your biggest takeaways from studying the life of somebody who was this wealthy at a time where most people
Well,
were not.
during the pandemic, 2020, I learned Italian. So I speak Italian, and I became fascinated about the Renaissance period. Here in Italy, actually in Florence, is the Renaissance city. I don't know. Have you ever been there, Travis? Have you
I
been to
have
Florence?
not. No, it's on the
Well,
list, but
I'm
I've not
happy
made
to
it out
invite
there.
you to come over. So anyhow, we were on a family vacation, and I'm studying all this Renaissance art. So we love art as a family, and so there's all these great artists: Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, all these Botticelli, all these great artists. And basically, what I discovered is behind all these great artists, there's a business family who sponsored all this art, and that is the Medici family, or I Medici, how the Italians say it. And so, if you actually, I knew about this family. They were cloth merchants who went into banking, and so they basically built this banking empire all over Europe in the 15th century. Cosimo de
Wow.
Medici, the founding father of the family, he was the billionaire of the 15th century. He was the richest guy, not coming out of nobility or royalty, just self-made millionaire, billionaire. And so I discovered him almost by accident reading some books, and then I got so sucked into that I read 70 books on the Medici family. So
Like
as a hobby of,
70.
yeah, 70. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, it's the Rockefeller family of Italy. It's Italy's most famous, most prominent family. There are over 1,000 books written on this family. It's like unbelievable. But here's what I discovered: all these books are written by historians, because this it's a history family, and I felt like, but these were business people. Well, how come no business guys ever looked at them? So basically, what I did is, as a business guy, I just looked at this family and just what principles are there. And so you asked me about the principles. They are incredible business principles, and I wrote this book called "Get Your House in Order." success principles based on the life of Cosimo de' Medici. And so I've distilled a few principles. I thought this guy is just incredible on how he did that. And I'm happy, by the way, that I'm not selling the book. You can just get a free version. Can download it at medicilegacy.com. We've got a website. By now, I'm hosting actually a business community, inviting guys to come with me to Florence and hang out and learn and that kind of stuff. But
Nice.
yeah, anyhow, but we can get into some principles if you want to.
Yeah, the medicilegacy.com you said was the website.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's our website. Basically, a friend of mine just encouraged me, after me just having a lot of fun with my hobby. By the way, I moved to Mallorca, Spain, with our family. So I live on a Spanish island. We have our offices here, but part of the year we spend live in Mallorca. Have you been to Mallorca?
I've been to probably 5 or 6 different cities in Spain, but I don't think Mallorca is one of them.
Yeah, so Mallorca is an incredible island, and yeah, actually, yeah. Anyhow, we just absolutely love it, and anyhow, so a friend of mine just kind of encouraged me. He said, "Chris, you know so much about this. Why don't you kind of through the lens of business, just write on it and invite some people?" So I actually took a lot of families and by now we're kind of at this family wealth level, so a lot of very wealthy families that just come and spend time with me, and our theme is legacy. So so when we talk about money principles here, and how to make money, I love that topic. There's but for me, really, it's also kind of how do you create a legacy, for yourself, for your family, and once you have a lot of businesses, also how do you hand them over, and how to get the kids involved. So these are kind of my topics on how I like to discuss some of that stuff. Yeah.
medicilegacy.com. Go check out the book, everything, all the resources and principles that Chris has put together over there. Man, one of the best ways to learn, man, is biographies and autobiographies. sometimes, sometimes, business, like tactical business books, they don't always apply to your exact situation. So I think sometimes the best way to learn is just by reading through the experiences of other people, because it kind of helps you more with the critical thinking part of your brain and helps you gain the principles through which they made decisions that will help you to be able to make decisions better, rather than just telling you, like, do this thing. It's like, well, that thing might be outdated, or that thing may not be specific to my situation. So you need to develop the critical thinking muscle. And I think biographies are a great way to do it. So I appreciate you for taking the time to research that family and put together a really great resource for people to learn from. Chris, let's move into the last segment here, something I like to call the random round, just some quick random questions, quick random answers, brought to our listeners by Go High Level. If you want a all-in-one CRM marketing platform in your business, go check out gohighlevel.com/Travis. Chris, you ready for this last segment?
Go for it, my friend.
What profession other than your own do you think that it would have been fun to master?
Art history.
If you could sit on a park bench with someone, past or present, and chat for an hour, who would it be?
Donald Trump.
How do you like to learn best? Books, audiobooks, blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos, newsletters?
Yeah, books and audiobooks.
What's a good book you'd recommend to the audience on money?
Because you just mentioned biographies, I love the biography of Arnold Schwarzenegger. First of all, he's got the same accent than I do. He has this German, but his autobiography is called Total Recall. And I just absolutely love on how he's, kind of mastered different sectors, different industries, and really, has been a self-made man.
What is your go-to pump-up song, Chris?
Bryan Adams, Summer of '69.
What is something that you are not very good at?
Oh, I can't work with my hands. I'm the dummiest guy ever. I'm a real estate investor, but I can't fix anything. And my wife's the opposite. She can build a house. She can do anything. I'm just the most useless guy ever with anything practical.
As we everything wrapped up here, man, where can people go to get more from you?
Yeah, MediciLegacy.com, I think is the best way. I own like 20 different companies. This is actually hosted by our family foundation. We set up a company in Singapore called Medici Global Ventures, where we bring business owners and entrepreneurs together. I also started doing some coaching and that kind of stuff, but it's really kind of hosting in 10 different cities around the world meetups of entrepreneurs and business owner, really to kind of think through success, significance, and legacy.
So MediciLegacy.com. I know I keep butchering that name, so I apologize. MediciLegacy.com, MEDICI Legacy.com. Go check out some of the resources they're putting out over there. Get a copy of Chris's book, Get Your House in Order, which is the principles of success based on this amazing family and the life of Cosimo de Medici. And go grab a copy of that book, man. Listen to the stuff that Chris is putting out. These principles are timeless. They're timeless principles that apply in the 15th century just as much as they apply today. So please do yourself a favor and pick up a copy of that book ASAP. Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I know you could use your time in a variety of ways. So we really appreciate you sharing some wisdom with us today here on the show. Everybody else listening, remember, money only solves your money problems, but it's a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Catch you next time. Peace out.